The views and opinions expressed do not reflect those of the Lounge Radio Show. The Lounge Radio Show does not endorse any political candidates.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Lounge Radio Show. We look a little bit different than you usually expect us. We have begun a series called The Lounge on Location, where we'll be traveling around to different businesses and entities, speaking with and interviewing people from all walks of life. And that's no different today. So welcome. And as we start our first one, we're so excited to be here with Socrates Garrett. Mr. Garrett is a candidate for the mayoral race for the city of Jackson, Mississippi, and we're here at his beautiful location, at his business here in Jackson, Mississippi. So we're going to dive into his journey today, speak to him about his past and also his trajectory leading up to being a candidate for the city of Jackson, or the mayor race for the city of Jackson, and speak to him about his vision and what he plans to do if he secures that seat. So thank you, Mr. Garrett, for having Lex and I here today. We're so happy to talk to you and be our first guest for the Lounge on Location.
Well, I hope this goes so well until I will be your only guest.
We'll come back. Once you win that race, we'll come back and we will speak to you every month if we need to.
I look forward to that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. It is a journey, and but I have the background and the resume to make me the best choice in this race.
That's it. Well, before we get started, we're gonna dive. Let's talk about Socrates Garrett a little bit. The young man that's leading you to where you are today. Can you give us your upbringing and what led you to establish Socrates Garrett Enterprises? Give us that journey.
Right, I'm second or third generation of leadership. And when I say that, my father was the first gentleman to run for elected office in Madison County in 1979. Okay. 1983, he ran for the supervisor's office there in Madison County at a time when civil rights and all of those activities were going on, and some mean folk were in Madison County at that time. My mother was afraid for the life of her sons, so she sent us all down to Piney Woods School, which is kind of crazy because Piney Woods is located in Rankin County, and Rankin County is notorious for civil rights violations. But she sent me down there with Lawrence C. Jones to study at Piney Woods. So I got a great education down there, and I learned a little bit about white folk that I had never known, because in our communities back in the time when I grew up, we were enclosed. Mm-hmm. I didn't see white folk every day.
Okay.
I didn't see them at all. I mean, in our community, if they came in our community, it was like somebody sounded the alarm that a new person is entering the community. So it's self-contained. Yeah. We grew our own food, we did our own work, and so it was an interesting childhood. But when I got to Piney Woods, I was introduced and I was being taught now by Europeans that had retired from the East and were now volunteering their time down at Piney Woods, and they were sharing me and telling me that this is America and that I could achieve and I could be what I needed to be. So I have an interesting childhood. My father never worked for anybody a day in his life.
Yeah.
So we were entrepreneurs and business owners and civil rights fighters.
That's it. Wow.
So now with that background, because I was raised similar, as far as being an entrepreneur, my grandfather and great-grandfather was the same way. And I know how that influenced me coming up even to this day. Now with those being the people who taught you, what type of influence and things that they taught you as being independent of working for someone, what are those values that you learned from your father?
Well, self-determination is a word that's often used, but many people don't practice it. And so, it was hard because we didn't get involved in commodities exchange and back in those days and things of that nature. We worked from sun up to sun down just so that we could be independent. We never pick cotton for anyone other than ourselves. We never worked on anybody's farm other than helping black folk who were late getting their crops out. We would help them. And so the independence was just there. And sometimes independence and ambition can be a terrible thing because it'll drive you day and night.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Definitely. And you know, like you're saying, that's not usual for blacks in Mississippi during that time because most blacks were dependent on whether the you know, plantation owners, and they had to get, you know, that having those values and then leading up to today. Would you say those are some of the things that would set you apart? And then we're just talking about the mayor race. Set you apart from maybe some of the others, and how would those values help you in if you are do secure that title as mayor?
Well, I'm unencumbered.
Yeah.
I don't owe anyone. I don't owe anybody any favors. No one made me. I'm a self-made man.
Yeah.
I don't have the need to associate to get along with anybody, nor does anyone have my mortgage or anything of that nature.
Yeah.
So those values will cause me to be very transparent and hold people accountable. When you work for me, you're going to give a good day's work. Productivity is going to be critically important for me. And so how I organize this city and how I staff this city will be based upon people with similar mindsets.
Yeah.
Similar backgrounds so that we can get a shared vision on where we're going.
Yeah.
And once I get that in place, I think recruiting is 80% of winning the championship.
That's true.
Yes.
It's not won the night of the game.
That's true.
So that's what I
true.
plan to do.
And so, in you running for mayor, what do you feel could be your biggest asset to the city of Jackson?
Well, I'm a contractor and I'm a business person. I'm the only true businessman in this race. You know, I hire people, I sign the front of the check, not the back of the check. You know, I have the skill sets. I've worked and repaired infrastructure all over this world, from Puerto Rico to the Virgin Islands to Minot, North Dakota in November, and it's cold up there in November. And so we have done that. I've done the Eubanks Creek stabilization projects. We put in the signal lights downtown with the city of Jackson. I've run the wastewater treatment plant, the dewatering aspect of it. I've run the Presidential Hills wastewater treatment plant. I've worked at the O.B. Curtis drinking water plant. I've worked at Fuels drinking water plant. I know where all of Jackson's assets are. And as a contractor, I know how to get things done. So I'm the only business person with that skill set in this race.
And speaking of that, being a businessman for most of your life,
Yeah.
what led you to transfer, like to go from, hey, I'm a business person now to a mayor leading a city more in the government sector? How do you feel because, you know, that was a question back in our presidential race, being a business person and not really having the government or leadership and experience over people.
Right.
How do you feel that you would transfer that experience of being a business person over to being a leader of a city?
Well, I think that it fits extremely well. I think where we've gone wrong in the past are hiring and electing people that did not have a business background, did not know how to run an enterprise. The city of Jackson is a $350 million enterprise. You just can't take a person off the street or someone off of a civic engagement or civil rights activist or someone that's popular, a preacher, and ask them to run a $350 million enterprise. It takes business skills to do that. And so part of the problem that we're having today is because we did not maintain the infrastructure properly. We did not staff it properly. Too many friends and associates in critical positions that didn't know what they were doing. Crime got out of hand. We didn't focus on the little things, the broken window theories. Fix the small things first, and then we'll get to larger stuff. We can deter crime a great deal if we enforce the small things. Right. And so I think as a business person, I'm ideally suited with my skill set to run this city.
Now, what you're saying, what you mentioned in the crime, Jackson has a high crime rate. Just recently, we had a lot of different things that inspired in Jackson over the few days with shootings and deaths, and even at some of the local functions here. How do you plan on combating the high crime rate in Jackson?
Well, it's interesting because we know who's committing the crimes. And so we need to focus on that population. Too much crime is being committed by young black males. We need to understand the root cause of that. Poverty, low self-esteem is creating that environment. When we took the father out of the household, when the man left out by design, he didn't voluntarily leave out. J. Edgar Hoover and folk after the riots in Watts had policy that said no man could be in the house if a woman was going to get any subsidy. So that systematically pushed them out and turned out females against the male. But what it did, though, it created a population of children that didn't have the discipline of their daddy. Now, when my daddy walked in the room and he looked at you a certain way, get your act in gear. It also hurt young girls as well who just loved their father and idolized their dad more than boys. And he was gone. And so now we got this population out here that is lost and they're broke. Their number one asset that they have is their pit bull and their rims. And when you get down to that stereotype, when you get down to that policy and down to that circumstance on individuals, they're going to commit crime. Now, I'd like to remind you that poverty breeds crime. Mississippi is one of the most corrupt states in the nation. Mississippi, not Jackson. But we very seldom talk about that. It's one of the most corrupt states in the nation, and the reason for it is because we are one of the poorest states in the nation. Where there's high poverty, there's high corruption and crime.
And speaking of that, though, the income levels, I have this is based on the census from 2019 to 2023. For Jackson, the median household income is $43,000. Per capita income is $26,000, and the poverty rate is 26.8%. And that's the past 4 or 5 years. We know that the mayor comes in, and they lead the city and presents opportunity. How would you, if you are elected on the first 90 days, what would you start to do for the city of Jackson to sort of help with increasing or assisting with improving those numbers?
Well, first of all, those numbers are understated.
Okay.
The unemployment, the poverty rate for young black males in this city is 60%. Or better. We got a tremendous problem there. Mm-hmm. Jackson is probably the most educated and the wealthiest community in the state of Mississippi when it comes to black folk. And the numbers are tremendously understated when you move outside of Jackson. I understand we're talking about Jackson. Mm-hmm. But that scenario continues to give great pause and creates a problem, high poverty rates. Now, what I plan to do about that is to make absolutely certain that the dollars in Jackson turn over at least 5, 6, 7 times before it leaves. Currently, all of our dollars come in here and they don't turn over one time. In other communities, they do. What does that mean? That an economic engine like Jackson State, there should be African-American businesses and young folk working that are selling ballpoint pens. The trucks should be running, doing dry cleaning, band cleaning uniforms. We should see an economy and an enterprise that's taking place. Mm-hmm. My job is to make certain that happens. Every contractor that comes in here and gets a contract from the city of Jackson will have a jobs program for Jackson youth. Mm-hmm. Not in the summertime when they're out of school. They're going to work all of the time after school. They're going to have a jobs program. And I'm going to go over there to Capital Alternative where we got these boys over there that have been kicked out of the school, and they're not a lost population. they got to be brought back into that workforce. So every contract will have a youth initiative tied to it. If not, you probably won't work here.
Yeah. Speaking of that, though, and there are a few organizations that they're trying to work with, assist with the youth. How would you, like you said, along with the contracts, but how would you create things for youth? And if we know that the young black male is, we see demographically the ones when we talk about crime in Jackson, how can you, or what things would you put in place to assist with that? Programs that can be available for them.
All of the other organizations are tremendously valuable.
Yeah.
100 Black Women, 100 Black Men, Reset Jackson, Save Our Children. My sister Olita is the regional director of the Children's Defense Fund. All of those organizations are tremendously important, and they have to be brought into a shared vision. Mm-hmm. What is it that you do well? And what is it this organization does well? If your thing is mentoring in the elementary schools, then I get that. But then there's somebody that's got to be reaching high schools and the other populations. So we got to understand what their mission statements are. Once we understand what it is they're designed to do, then I got to help them achieve their goals. First of all, I got to let them know that I understand it's important. Young women, for example, there's Women for Progress that's out here that's doing a magnificent job. I have to tie into them, and I specifically have to focus on single moms, because that whole environment right there creates a problem. Having to try and raise a child, discipline a child, and work 2 jobs, it is just, it's terrible. It is hard. So I got to focus on them. And my granddaughter told me something that I hadn't thought about. She said, you women restore men, but nobody restores women. She said, we don't have anybody to restore us.
Yeah.
But we make y'all. And I was sitting there. She said, nothing you've ever done on your own could you have done if you had not had the support of the woman. And so I think she's, based upon her schooling me a little bit about that, I think they're tremendously undervalued. Yeah. And so we got to get inside of that and bring all of these organizations designed to do that and make certain that we support them as a city. How do we support them? We support them with the infrastructure, buildings, so that they have someone where to run the organizations. We got so many abandoned properties. Tax abatement, where they don't have to pay taxes for 5 years. If I like your mission statement, then you won't be paying any city taxes to run that organization. Most nonprofits don't, but some do if you're not a church or some things like that. So I want to work with them and support them in every way that we can.
Yes. Now, with you mentioning the infrastructure too, one thing that Jackson is faced with is our water crisis.
Yeah.
You know, and and it's all based around the infrastructure of our water system. Do you have a plan in place to address those issues?
Oh, absolutely. Again, as a contractor, I've designed water systems. I've done stabilization projects on that. I'm probably the only candidate that knows where the water plant really is and how it functions and where it gets its water from in terms of the reservoir, why the reservoir was created and what the initial problems are. That understand the distribution lines in this city, the 2-inch and 4-inch lines, and the impact of fire hydrants and when they don't have water, and it creates a hazard for us and crime and houses burning and things that we can't respond to. So I know Jackson's water system. I know where all of its its lift stations are. I know how the water gets from the storm drains exactly to the Pearl River through our creeks and our distribution system. You know, God created a magnificent system when he created the waterways and how the rivers run into the seas, run into the rivers, etc. And so I understand how Jackson is designed, and I understand where it's hurting. For example, once we fix the production problems with the plant at O.B. Curtis, which we're doing now with $800 million from the federal government, once we fix that and then we increase the distribution lines and repair them and make them safe, then all of that new pressure is coming from that plant, and it's going to hit these old laterals that run from the main line to your house and your kitchen. That line has not been talked about, but it's tied to every house. It's 100 years old too. And so what's going to happen is we're going to have a tremendous burden on our citizens dealing with laterals from the main line to the house. I plan on putting a solution in place for that because I know the problem is coming. And so we're going to have to address that.
We gave one statistics like earlier about the demographics of Jackson, and again 143,000 residents, maybe a little off on that number, and then 82% black, 16% white. What? And I see it being out in the community. We see a lot of the races working together, but we do see a divide in some places. If you're mayor, can you discuss your involvement in initiative aims to bridge that racial divide between the? And I don't, like I said, it's not significant, but I do see it. Maybe even with people outside of Jackson when they look at Jackson. How would you work on bridging that?
Well, we lost our business community. White folk left Jackson when Harvey Johnson became mayor. The outward migration started to take place. Over the last 20 years or so, we began to see a return into Jackson. So we have Fondren, and we see significant development over there. They have what's called a business improvement district. Now, a business improvement district is allowed to tax itself. You see, only the state can authorize taxations. But these business improvement districts are like the capital improvement complex, etc. They can do things that the government can do to make life better. They can have their gated communities. They can have their own cleanup programs, etc. I see that migration back into Jackson, around Millsaps College and down on Cohee and Blair Streets and Ferris and Monument Street. I see that movement into Jackson, and I welcome white folk coming in. I'm actually recruiting them to come into our city, etc. But I'm not going to be happy with gentrification if all of the black people that were there can no longer afford the homes that's being created. So this is a very delicate situation. We gotta recruit new rooftops in our city. So I'm doing that every day because we have to lower these taxes, and I want businesses to come back. But at the same time, I got to deal with the economic condition of our citizens that are here.
Yeah.
So my plan is to have a comprehensive plan to recruit businesses, and not only just to come in and have an enclave like Fondren, but to recruit business that come in and say that I'm going to put job opportunities in South Jackson. I'm going to put opportunities in West Jackson. My bank is going to be open in the community. My restaurants are going to have branches in the community. And so once we get a shared vision with the folk that are coming in that are in agreement with me that we can't let this donut hole deteriorate any further than it has. This is our capital city. They got to buy into it. We got to do what's necessary to make it work.
Yeah, and I want to follow up on that when we just talk about because I've heard plenty of people say if Jackson failed, Mississippi failed. Jackson is the foundation, but working with the other, we know Mississippi is a Republican state. And we've all seen and witnessed a lot of the government elected officials, governor, wherever, other people outside of Jackson don't found favor or have those rocky relationships with the leadership. How would you mend that too as well? How would you, again, not really going to let you come and walk over us, but how would you work with them and extend that olive branch to the other elected officials in the state?
We got to get a shared vision, but we got to negotiate from a position of strength. We can't negotiate until we get our house straightened out. The city council, arguing and bickering, and it divided against the administration. The board of supervisors having these charades down there, and my friend David Archie going off over everywhere, tearing up everything. And my Hinds County delegation, the members of the Black Caucus are divided. They're not working with the administration, etc. So when we go into the state government, the government says, y'all don't get along with yourselves. So how can I help you? So my thing is that once we get united, then we march into state government and we talk to the elected officials about the things that they're doing that's hurting us, united, and they will begin to listen. See, I want to develop the Pearl River, and I want a casino down there off of Jefferson Street. I want an entertainment district running from the medical mall all the way out to the zoo. Once we are united and we go in there and we say, you are stopping us from improving our own economy, and we didn't ask you for anything to do that but get your foot off our neck and let the legislation work for us. Where you're spending the gaming money that the state is collecting, and what percentage of African Americans contributing to that? A great deal. Why aren't those dollars reallocated back into the city of Jackson, into the population that's putting the money in there? And so we got to have that kind of conversation. Now, I'm the past chairman of the Greater Jackson Chamber of Commerce. So 2,300 white businessmen and women chose me as their leader. So I know them, and they know me. And so the ability to go in, not to the elected officials, because the elected officials are controlled in the majority of the community by the white business community.
Yep.
That's where they get their marching orders from. So for me to go talk to Governor Tate Reeves about an issue is secondary to me going to talk to Mayor Gary Rhodes in Flowood and Dean Kirby, the majority senator over there in Rankin County, or the Haley Barbers of the world. They have to bring the governor to the table and say, we want you to look at this. And so it's got to be a new approach to it.
Thanks.
Now, you just mentioned briefly about the casino and resort, and that being part of the economic development that you want to bring to the city of Jackson. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, we got to generate new revenue. And so we got to create our own economy. See, it's $1 billion flowing through Hinds County annually. We got $350 million over there at the city. We got $360 million at Jackson Public Schools. We got another $300 million at Hinds County. We got another $300 million at the Airport Authority. All those are controlled by black folk.
Oh, wow.
The mayor appoints all of the members to the school board, the Jackson Redevelopment Authority, the Airport Authority. All of that is there. To create our economy and fix our infrastructure, we got to make our dollars stay here from those economic engines. And then we get to our businesses, et cetera. So, yeah, I'm going to work on infrastructure. I'm going to work on fixing that. I'm going to fix pipes and roads and bridges, but I'm going to get a shared vision with this surrounding community. I want a regional sales tax. So I'm going to go say, look, our folk, you moved all of the shops out of Jackson, so our folk don't have nowhere to shop. So they in Dogwood and they in the Renaissance and they buying all your goods and apparel. I don't want to call for a boycott of those stores out there, but we need to share with some of the revenue from the sales tax that's coming that our citizens are buying until we can build our own outlets. And once we're fair, our citizens have equal opportunity to shop, then maybe we won't need it anymore. But right now, I'm going to propose that to the legislature. They may not get it the first time, but they're going to have to get it in the end because, as you said, Jackson is the capital city. It cannot continue to be allowed to deteriorate and have high crime and be an unclean city. That just can't continue.
And one thing you just briefly mentioned was about the education, because to me, a lot of things can be improved with it starting with our education system in Jackson, as far as the businesses goes and the other things with businesses coming to Jackson and with the income of our citizens being raised. It starts with the education and our educational system in Jackson. Do you have a plan in place that can help our kids and the students that goes to Jackson Public Schools have a better learning situation than is currently being provided?
The problem in the state of Mississippi is that the locals don't control the curriculum. And so IHL in the Department of Education, IHL is controlling the colleges, what they can teach, etc. The Department of Education is controlling the public school system and what they could teach. So my thing with this is that we gotta get everybody to understand that our children have different needs. And with the technology change and shift that's occurring today, we have to have children that know how to build their own houses again, have to repair their own vehicles again, that know how to create things. So we're going to put vocational education back in the school system. Education is critical. Charter schools is draining off the top talent out of our public school system. And the dollars are flowing from the public school system over to the charter schools. And that hurts public education, because when you take the brightest of our students from the best families in our community and you either move out of Jackson or you send them to charter school, you're creating a challenge on the school superintendent and the rest of the kids that are there to maintain a C or level school district or a B level school district. But our school superintendent is doing a good job, and those ratings are now improving. So education is tremendously important.
Definitely. Well, let's shift back to you said, I know we know you've been a business man for the past 30 years, and you own Socrates Garrett Enterprises. Over the past 3 decades, which projects undertaken by your company do you believe have had the most significant impact on the city of Jackson?
Well, we've had so many. And so in terms of the most significant was, see, Jackson's assets have always generated revenue for non-Jacksonians. Mm-hmm. I began to operate the wastewater treatment plant 20 years ago. And I brought in African Americans, boys and young men at the highest level that the city has ever. We ran all of that department down there. And so our community now knows that that's an economic engine that they need to be involved in, running the water plant, managing your assets. So I've exposed where the opportunities are. Nobody would have had never done that before, to say there's a major opportunity in this wastewater treatment plant. We look at it and say it's taboo. Yeah. Let's stay away from that because, it's dirty, it's nasty, etc. Yeah. But that is part of our economy. Mm-hmm. So I exposed our people to managing the assets of Jackson's from the wastewater treatment plant. They ran that. They put in the parking meters down there in the city of Jackson. They understand the revenue associated with that. Mm-hmm. They understand the water and the billing cycle associated with that. And so those have been my greatest achievements, to introduce our citizenry in our community to these assets that they need to be managing and running and economically empowering themselves. I run a construction company. We tear down more houses and buildings than anybody else in the state. And I turn all of that concrete into recycled aggregates that they use to put pipe in and things of that nature. So we run every piece of equipment on demand, tractors, bobcats, doesn't matter, trucks, and things like that. And we teach a lot of young folk how to run this equipment. So primarily we're a construction company, civil construction company. So I produce things. So this is 20,000 copies of Socrates Garrett that's going to hit the street in this last week.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
Timing.
And so we print and we publish. You know about this podcast studio. Over there, we run the internet radio station. It runs 24 hours a day. So internet radio and podcast studio over here. This lady across the hall over here is Teresa Chavon. She runs Prime Star Media. And she's a pretty good filming operation. She's running out of Atlanta, Jackson, etc. She made that movie, Mama's Boy. A little friend of mine by the name of KJ.
Okay.
He's building out a production studio. He's got a vision, he's got a dream. I appreciate anybody that's got a vision.
It's what's going right now. You need to.
Marlena, right? Well, Jackie Hampton. How are you? Nice to meet you.
I went out to Turkey and I ordered my own.
Your vision, because I've heard you said you want your goal is if once you become if you get the opportunity to become mayor, you want everybody to sort of have this shared vision. You want to get everybody on board, and that I feel passed down from leadership to, like I said, the city council, and then to the constituents. How do you plan to go about? How do you plan to get everybody? Because you know, like you said, we have been fighting. People inside the house are fighting.
Yeah.
How do you get everybody to come together? How does Mayor Garrett get everybody to come together with one shared vision?
Barack Obama said that I have to see things through your eyes. Mm-hmm. That means I gotta know where you're coming from. And I got to be able to see that. If you're afraid of crime in Jackson, I can't say that crime is not bad. It may be a perception, but for you, it's real. I got to first understand how you're seeing things. And then we can begin to talk about a common ground. And then we can focus on the things that we have in common that are not so hard to deal with. And we begin to have gains. We have small victories. We have small triumphs where we all standing together and working together. Black and white leaders. Mm-hmm. Black leaders first, but then white leaders as well, because we got to have strength. Mm-hmm. And so I have to be able to articulate that. I think I can do that because everybody wants something. Our senior citizens want good food, and they want to go to these community centers, and they want to be comfortable. They don't want to be cold. They don't want to be hot. And right. They deserve that. I understand that. You know, and so we have to work together to understand where they're coming from. What is really going on with you? Why do you really want my airport? What do you see there? Okay, through his eyes, he sees that we own 3,000 acres of land out in Rankin County, that we are impeding his economic development out there, bringing that in. That's what he sees. What we see it as is an asset that belongs to Jackson, Mississippi, that should be benefiting our economy down here. And so we got to get to the table and say, look, you know, I see you taking the highway patrol and all of the agencies out of Jackson. But yet, you want to take the ones that we own that is outside of Jackson, you want to take that away from us. Now, that doesn't work. Yeah. That doesn't work. And so we got to have those kind of negotiations, those kind of conversations, and come up with a way where it's a win for everybody. I don't know what that looks like right now. But I can tell you this. that I'm going to put together a team of individuals like you've not seen before, with skill levels and skill sets that can run any city and any business. And once they're in place, we're going to see a tremendous change in the way Jackson is run. My job is to never be the smartest person in the room. If I find myself in that position, I know I'm failing. And so I think we can pull this off, getting everybody to buy into a shared vision.
Yeah, it takes that. You can't have certain individuals thinking this way and they have their own agenda or their own reason for being in a particular, that's whether it's the city council or whomever,
Right.
can't have their own agenda. It has to be about the people and progressing the city. One thing I know, talking to some of the voters, younger people, they go to school in Jackson, they graduate, they go off to college, and they're gone. They don't look at Jackson as a reason where they're looking at Atlanta. I can go over here and go downtown and walk. I can get me a condo apartment downtown, and I have so much to do. How would you tell young people, hey, yeah, even because I have children, right? I have a daughter. And go to college, go off, see the world, but come back and bring your talents and skills back home. How would you encourage them, or what would you say to them? That if you become mayor, that they will have a reason to stick around and assist building up Jackson.
Yeah. This brain drain that you're talking about now is the greatest challenge that we have because our young people leave.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't see a reason to stay. There's nothing for them to do. There are no jobs. There are no activities. So it's a tremendous problem for us. And we got to fix that. Now, the way we fix that, though, is to have shared programs with them while they're here in school in terms of how do we create activities. For example, take Jackson State. All around Jackson State University, there's got to be boutiques, it's got to be shops, it's got to be economy that they're participating in while they're there in school, even if they're shopping or working in those environments. And we have to create activities. That's why I want to do things like a casino, bring in new revenue, bring in an entertainment district. You take the zoo. Everybody is talking about the zoo. Do we move it? Do we don't move it? It's an eyesore, blah, blah, blah. What they're not saying is that Jackson State University ought to have a curriculum that specifically teaches you how to run the zoo and how to maintain your animals. Our veterinarian schools ought to be tied into the zoo every day. And it ought to be mandatory that us JPS bring their kids there. So we'll get the traffic back in it. And so we're going to have to create an environment for our young folk. If you stay here and work with us, we will pay you incentives to do that. If you want to be a teacher, then your college education, we're going to pay for it for the first 4 years you're in college. But you got to give me 2 years back. You got to stay here there. If I can get you to stay the first 2 years and we build a house and we get home, you get married, etc., I got a better chance of fixing that problem. So we got to have a comprehensive plan on stopping the brain drain. That's not black folk. White kids leave here at an alarming rate as well. Nobody wants to stay in Mississippi because we're backwards. And so we got to turn that around. Delta Airlines tried to move to Jackson before it moved into Atlanta. But the leadership of the state, the rural leadership and farmers didn't want it in here. And so they moved on down there. Bad decisions we made. And it's hurting us today. Look at Nashville. Look at Birmingham. Look at Montgomery. All of those municipalities now have something for their young folks to do, places to stay.
That's it, yeah.
Well, one thing that we haven't touched on I feel that we must touch on
Okay.
is that the challenges that our city leadership have been facing recently with the charges that are against a lot of our leadership that are facing federal charges. A lot of our citizens have kind of lost faith in our politicians. How do you feel that you're able to overcome those trust issues and be able to be transparent and be accountable for our government as having the top office of being mayor of Jackson, Mississippi?
One of the challenges that we have is that we want to push our children into positions of leadership, and rightfully so. But we can't leave them. And so the traps that have been set for them now, we have 10 to 12 prominent people, young folk, that have fallen prey to, in my opinion, a lot of it's entrapment. The government should not be down here trying to see if you will take a bribe. So I call that entrapment. But they have fallen prey to that. So my job is to restore the city, but to restore its people. So all of those individuals are tremendously talented. I look forward to the day when they are serving again. They've learned their lesson. They have the knowledge. I cannot lose that knowledge they've acquired. They've learned, they paid their dues, but now I'm bringing them back into the organization. But I'm not going to leave them again. See, when I got Mayor Yarby elected, I probably was the #1 guy that made that happen. My mistake was, though, when the day he got elected, I didn't visit him with him anymore. I didn't come down and say, okay, what are you up against? What are people telling you? What are they saying to you? I didn't have that dialogue with him, so he didn't have the access to the wisdom that I have. So I tell them all, this gray hair that you see is what's required right now. We got to reset the city. We got to establish trust and accountability. And we got to have an individual that's experienced, that cannot be bought, unencumbered, that will restore our citizens and our leaders. And it's not just their problem. I mean, you in this generation. Bill Clinton, young men fall prey to different things. Boat rides, airplanes, girls, body painting deals. It's just human nature. And so we got to blend it now. We got to put some experience, some wisdom in there with youth and energy. And we got to merge those two things together to get our children through these traps that are lying in front of them.
Yeah, because it's not exclusive to just, our people. It happens. I'm not going to say everybody, I'm not going to say most, but it happens.
It does.
It's just who's getting exposed for it, whomever decides to expose for those behaviors. It's just one of those things where, especially as Black people, we have to maybe walk a little bit differently compared to others that are doing the same thing.
Doing absolutely the same thing, yes. But we're paraded across the media in a different way.
That's it.
The welfare scandal in Mississippi won't get nearly as much attention as the current indictment of the mayor of the city of Jackson.
That's it.
And brilliant young man just fell in a trap.
Yeah. Allegedly.
Yes. So now, if I'm a citizen of Jackson, and I met you in public, and I seen you somewhere, and I had only 3 minutes to share with you in
30 seconds.
30 seconds. And I said, so Mr. Garrett, why should I vote for you over any other candidate at that?
Because I'm the best choice for this time. At this time, what's required is an individual that can repair Jackson's infrastructure, can restore its people, and can bring people together and create a shared vision for this city. I'm the one guy that has enough experience to be able to accomplish that.
Sounds good. That sounds, and again, we appreciate you for allowing us to come speak to you and learn more about Socrates Garrett at your amazing facility here in Jackson. And best of luck on the race.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you've witnessed our first live on location with Mr. Socrates Garrett, the mayoral candidate for the city of Jackson, Mississippi. Stay tuned. We're going to have many more of the Lounge on locations. And if you have any suggestions, y'all let us know. Let us know who you would like us to talk to and a business you would like us to visit. Until next time, I'm Marlena.
And I'm Lex, and I want to also remind you to make sure you vote. The preliminaries is April the 1st.
Okay.
Make sure to go place your vote for the candidate that you feel is most worthy, and then be prepared to vote again in the primaries. I want to say thank you.
Sounds good. So until next time, let's lounge on location. See you soon.
If you or your business would like the lounge to highlight your brand on location, please email us at theloungeradiowmpr@gmail.com.